Well, on the line this morning is former Police Commissioner Gary Griffith. He is also the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance. Mr. Griffith, as always, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, good morning. Always my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I want to go into a statement that you would have put out, and you say in that statement the restriction on all firearms in courtrooms must remain, as the court is a sanctuary controlled by the judicial arm of the state, not the TTPS. I want you to expand a little bit on that for us.
Sure. It is unfortunate when persons hold positions of authority, they do not do research, they do not travel, they do not look at international best practice. That is something that is stipulated in most courts around the world, and there's a reason for that. It is not that you're questioning the professionalism of the police service, but there are many situations that would warrant a court not to have persons with firearms other than those persons who are specifically assigned to provide security in the courtroom. So let me first add that I do understand the concern by the Police Welfare Association, because there would be extenuating circumstances that may warrant the justification for police officers to have firearms, such as a criminal who is heavily involved in serious violent crime. Sometimes the police may need to bring evidence. But let's look at specific situations that would justify the grounds for our judiciary not to have police officers carry firearms. Suppose a police officer is involved in a domestic violence matter with his wife. Why would he have authorization to carry a firearm? Suppose a police officer is given evidence to testify. Why would he carry a firearm? Suppose there's a state prosecutor and is cross-examining, or a defense attorney, cross-examining a police officer. He can very well be intimidated knowing that I am cross-examining someone, and if he's getting upset, he has a firearm. Why would a police officer who may be a state prosecutor questioning someone on the witness stand have a firearm? Suppose this police officer is just in the public gallery. So there are many situations that police officers have just been using their ID card and getting inside, whether it is for a civil, sometimes they may be involved in just a civil case with someone else. Why must you have a firearm in the court? All of these things can affect the jury, it can affect the judge, it can cause persons to be intimidated. And that court is a sanctuary. So as much as it may be a public office, we have laws and we have regulations, and it must be respected. And the Chief Justice, quite rightly, has a strong concern. And what this all comes down to, it has to do with communication, it has to do with dialogue. We had the same situation when I was Commissioner of Police, and therein lies the difference. The difference is not about being brighter and understanding, it is accessibility, it is trying to communicate with persons. I had several meetings with the Chief Justice, I brought in the Welfare Association, understood the needs and concerns by the Welfare Association, and the option is to come up with some solution that can please both parties. What was done is just ask the Chief Justice, CJ here, can we put specific approval for specific cases on a daily basis to state that Constable A, B, and C, we recommend that they work with their firearms because they are part of a court matter involving this criminal, this person who is now going to be before the courts, or they may be bringing evidence, and they need to make sure that they have their firearm to secure the evidence. And the Chief Justice approved it. So the Chief Justice and the court is not being arrogant about it, but it is a degree of flexibility that is required. What is not accepted is for a Welfare Association president to have the audacity to give an instruction to defy the work and the operations of police officers. The Welfare Association has no operational authority. So in local parlance, he's passed out of place. Had I been Commissioner of Police, he would have been suspended immediately if what I am hearing is true, that the Welfare Association is given a directive to police officers not to adhere to their duty. But this is where leadership comes in.
All right. So let me be devil's advocate, Mr. Griffith, and I want to put it in the context of if police officers feel that their lives are being put at risk. Because we have seen in recent times, we have seen police officers being killed. We have seen in the past situations happening in the docks at these courtrooms where police officers would have been injured, prisoners would have been injured. There was a particular case where a bag of feces would have been thrown. I can't remember if it was a magistrate or a judge, but a judicial officer. So the argument is, if it is that you are saying to police officers, well, here's what, don't carry that firearm into the courtroom, doesn't it put police officers at a greater risk now?
Well, if we go down that road, it gives the authority for police officers to carry a firearm 24/7. The judiciary has their own security body to make sure, and it is done all over the world. Why we always feel that everybody is wrong and we are right? We just have to look at international best practice to come with the concept that it will affect the lives of a police officer. I challenge anyone, name one occasion where a police officer has lost their life because they couldn't walk with a firearm in a court. The court is probably the most secure area because of the scanners, because of the trained personnel in the judiciary who have their own security. Just like saying, well, a police officer must have a right to walk with his firearm in the U.S. Embassy or in your home. It is not allowed. Don't come with that about, well, it is going to affect the lives of a police officer. Not on one occasion has there ever been a situation in the court that because a police officer did not have his firearm, it cost him his life. What we are seeing outside is because of bad policing, bad management, bad leadership. Inside the court, it is the most secure place to be because there's full scanning that takes place and there are qualified, trained security personnel with firearms that work on behalf of the Chief Justice. And what we are going to see, the one thing that I totally tried to prevent when I was minister or commissioner is what is known as blue on blue, where it involves confrontation between the army and the police, confrontation between the police and security officers, confrontation now between the police and armed officers of the judiciary who are securing the courts. So to say that it is going to affect the police officers, what should happen is, again, the minimum use of force policy, because everyone inside the court is unarmed, including the criminal, those persons who have been charged and may be deemed as criminal elements who may be violent. That is why you have tasers. That is why you have pepper spray. You're not going to come with a firearm because somebody is throwing face tasers at you. So let us not come with that attitude that, oh, it is going to affect the police. However, notice I continue to double down. There would be circumstances of certain criminal element who may be charged and police officers who may be providing evidence, who may be there to be a witness, who may be there to testify. And in a situation like that, the Chief Justice would approve it. So there will be special circumstances. But anytime you throw a broad brush, you're talking about a police officer involved in a domestic violence matter with his wife. Why must he show an ID card to get into the court if he's given evidence, if he's a witness, if he's in the public gallery, if he's in a personal civil matter with another citizen, if he's cross-examining someone? Why must he have a firearm? This is going to have some degree of intimidation by the persons on the other side. And there must be impartiality. You must be neutral, and you cannot have a judge, jury, or anyone feeling intimidated or uncomfortable because of a firearm. That is why it is done like this all over the world. But
you have said that you encountered this same exact issue when you were police commissioner, and it was resolved through flexibility, communication, and so on. But I'm just trying to find out at that time what was the argument of the Chief Justice and I suspect other judicial officers, because you said, hold on, you said earlier. If we can name one situation in the court where a police officer would have been harmed because they didn't have a firearm. But I think that there can also be the argument, name one situation that would have transpired in the court where a police officer would have used a firearm to harm or intimidate someone in some way. Exactly, which means that there's no justification to have the firearm, because there was never a need for the police officer to have used his firearm. So it means that it is a non-issue. There's never been a threat for a police officer in the court. But it does not mean that we must put, similar to other places in the world where at no time police officers must carry a firearm. What we have right now, we are under siege. We are in our darkest hours in this country. So police officers must have some degree of protection. And because of that, all that is required is for the Commissioner of Police on a weekly basis state, these are the 13, 25 odd cases that require the special branch, that require the officers to carry their firearms. It cannot be a broad brush that any time a police officer is going to court, whether it is a personal matter, whether he's testifying, whether he's cross-examining, whether he's a state prosecutor, whether he's in the public gallery, whether he has a personal civil matter with another citizen, that he has the right to carry a firearm in the court.
You wouldn't do it if a police officer goes to the embassy. So it does not affect it anyway. You have to look at the risk factor. You can't say, well, what if something may happen? But then you will have to justify if a police officer goes in the U.S. Embassy or the British High Commission, he has a right to carry his firearm because you never know what the
But you don't think that this is a tedious exercise? You don't think that's a tedious exercise that you have to, let's say, every week sit down and maybe discuss with the Chief Justice, well, this matter is coming up, and Officer Marlon Hopkinson is going to be in the court, and we should decide if he should carry the firearm on that day because we're hearing he's having problems, and we're hearing this and we're hearing that. It sounds like a tedious exercise to me.
Well, again, only lazy people will think that. If it is because it worked with myself as commissioner. It worked. The Chief Justice was satisfied with it. The Welfare Association had no issue. The matter came to a close because we have to accept there must be extenuating circumstances to allow it to happen. But at the same time, if we open a broad brush, we can open ourselves to a Pandora's box where, again, you speak about what if. Why must a police officer walk with his firearm if he's in a domestic violence case with his wife? Why must he walk with a firearm if he has a civil matter over land dispute with somebody else? If he's a state prosecutor cross-examining someone, why must he have a firearm if he's in a public gallery watching an event? So there must be circumstances. This is the law. If it is that there's a concern, then it is you amend the law. Until then, the police officers must adhere to the law. There's a regulation in the court that judiciary is a sanctuary similar to an embassy. It is well secured. There's a structure there. There's proper scanning. The officers who secure the judiciary, they are well trained. So you cannot be involved in openly stating, I'm a police officer, this is my ID card, I must have access and you cannot stop me.
But what sort of message is being sent to the criminal that police officers are now unarmed in the court? What sort of message are you sending?
You just look at 130, 140 countries in the world. No criminal, no citizen is stating that. Because then you're stating, what is the message you're sending that a police officer must not carry his firearm if he goes into someone's home without a warrant? What message are you sending to tell a police officer you have to lodge your firearm every time you go into an embassy? Why do we feel that it is the right of a police officer to carry a firearm every single place? There are specific areas that are sterile, that are well secured, and you would not have it. A police officer can't go into a cricket match to see the Night Riders lose again and say, well, I have a firearm, I have a right to get inside there. No, you will not be allowed with your firearm unless you're on duty. So you cannot put a broad brush. It's dangerous time, so a police officer must carry his firearm anywhere he please. And remember again, there is a law, there's a regulation. If there's a serious concern that we need to amend the regulation because of the volatile situation that is happening in the country that can put the officers at risk, change the law.
But you don't feel this is handicapping police officers? Because you're taking away one of the main tools of a police officer to act if something happens.
But Marlon, what has it ever happened in a court? I challenge you. I will eat my phone if you could ever tell me when has there been a situation that a police officer was required to have his firearm inside the court?
And I am saying to you, where's the data that shows that something has happened? So therefore, as you have put it, the situation does not arise if nothing has happened.
Well, if it has never happened, why you have to carry the firearm? So you have just contradicted yourself.
Well, I think you are doing the same thing. And the Chief Justice is doing the same thing.
No, because if the court is sterile, it is well secured, everyone is checked. There's no need for a firearm to protect someone because nobody else has a firearm in the court. That is the reason. So there's no justification. If, however, there's a concern, I said, you see, sometimes people are lazy, Marlon. When it was done, it worked. The officers, whether it's a special branch, whether it will be police officers providing evidence against a criminal element who we know that he is seriously red flag, the list went in and the Chief Justice approved it. My point being is that if it is that there's a serious concern based on a threat assessment, amend the law. Until then, we need to adhere to the law. So I am not saying that amendments should be made because it is a little difficult to provide the listing, but it was done. The Chief Justice was satisfied. He gave the approval for all of these specific cases, and the police they were satisfied. What is not accepted is for anyone in a welfare association to try to give a directive to police to defy their role and function and their oath in office. That, if I tell you, if I was commissioner, he would be suspended immediately. You are defying the role and function of a police officer. You have no operational authority to give an order to police officers. That is tantamount to mutiny.
But is he not
give an order to police officers?
Is he not seeking?
Not adhere to their role and function.
Is he not seeking the welfare of police officers?
No. He is seeking the welfare, but you cannot give an order to defy the instructions of the commissioner of police. If the commissioner of police has given an instruction, the role that responsibility lies on the commissioner. You can be concerned, you can voice your concern, you can strongly recommend. You cannot virtually tell police officers do not attend duty, because that is the full site of indiscipline, unprofessionalism. And you know, again, Marlon, all of this, it comes back to my main point: communication, dialogue, mutual respect. If this is what has affected our country, we cannot build a community, build a constituency, build a country by dialogue. Imagine Terence Dial Singh actually blocked me when he heard Gary Griffith is going up for St. Joseph. So you as a member of parliament, if you're not supporting me, I'm blocking you. That is what has affected the country: lack of dialogue, lack of communication. The Chief Justice has a right, because there's a law. If you all wanted to insist that every police officer at any time must just show his ID card, change the law. Until then, you adhere to the law. You do not give an order to police officers not to do something because you feel it could affect them.
But
that is your perception.
But you think the head of an independent organization should be telling other people who are a part of an independent institution what to do and what not to do?
No, what you do is you adhere to the law. There's a law, there's a regulation. The Chief Justice, the judiciary has a regulation that firearms are not allowed. Until you change that law, you have to adhere to the law, and you have to adhere to your oath in office. You have to adhere to your responsibility to do your work. And if it is people trying to tell you do not do your work, then you now have become virtually a rogue element trying to override what their responsibility is based on the perception that, well, it is going to affect them. It could go along the line, Marlon, that a deputy commissioner of police can now tell police officers, do not report to duty because all the bulletproof vests are faulty. When is it going to stop? So because something may not please you, you will give an instruction contrary to the role and function of police officers.
But that's a good point that you have made. That's a good point that you have made, because if it is that, let's say that police officers believe that their lives are being put at risk, they believe that they do not have the resources to protect them effectively and efficiently. So in that context, do they not have a case, an argument?
They have an argument, but they cannot just say they're going to drop tools and not perform their duty. Because remember, there's all a perception. The role of the Chief Justice is very clear. And again, as I said, Marlon, is it that the hundreds plus countries that have a similar method, they are wrong and we are right? Why do we can never go further north than Tobago, educate ourselves and look at international best practice? For us to come here this morning to say, well, there's a possibility that it might happen one day to give the police officer. What about the possibility that the officer will have his firearm and shoot his wife in a domestic violence matter because we decided to insist that police officers must carry firearms? There have been situations internationally about that. There have been situations where, compare the number of times internationally a police officer, thank God he had a firearm to shoot somebody in a court, compared to the number of times police officers had negligent discharges. They'll use their firearm for the wrong reason in a court. It caused intimidation of judges, of attorneys.
But that's the same risk. But that's the same risk that you're taking when you're giving anyone an FUL, not so? That's the risk you're taking.
So everything in life is risk. But the risk factor is shown at the data. There's never been a situation that if the police officer did not have his firearm, it caused a situation to take place. The judiciary so far, thankfully, it has been very professional in securing the courts. So there's never been a reason that the police officer, every police officer must have a firearm. Again, I am stating, I agree with the concerns of the Welfare Association. The avenue of trying to direct police officers not to perform their duty is irresponsible. It requires dialogue and communication, which is what many leaders in this country lack. which is what I do, which is why I am and I will continue to be the most accessible person in public office. You have to communicate. Had that been done, had they had meetings with the Chief Justice, this situation of trying to virtually tell police officers, drop tools, would not happen, because it was cleared up in 2019, 2020. The Welfare Association, I brought them in with the Chief Justice, we had dialogue, and it worked. It worked well. If the present commissioner is too lazy to put that list and give it to the Chief Justice, well then don't blame Mr. Dixon, don't blame the Chief Justice. Do your work, get the list, and it was working. And after that, there was never a concern. We heard from the Welfare Association again. So I don't think the Welfare Association either wants every single police officer to have a right to walk with their firearm if they're given evidence, if they're in the public gallery, if they're in a domestic violence matter with their wife, if there's a civil matter with a civilian. I shudder to think that that's what they are insisting. But they have a serious concern of criminal elements having going to court, and the police officer now is there left defenseless, and he may very well be leaving the court after giving evidence against the person, and now he's defenseless because now he has to go to a station to get his firearm. So these circumstances, we look at the list, and you did it. But that is why Mr. Man here worked 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. Do your work. If you do your work as in the office of the Commissioner of Police, this matter will be rectified. Communication, dialogue, mutual respect.
I just have about 2 minutes again, because I think that there may be a perception that, and you did speak about international best practices, and I think that some people will say, well, here's what, but every jurisdiction, it's different. It's a different environment. And I think that there's the perception that while this has been in place since 2016, but there is no real justification. Could you remember what was the justification of the Chief Justice when he had talks with you concerning this matter?
Well, I just mentioned it. Why must a police officer have a matter of domestic violence with his wife and show an ID card to walk in a court? Imagine you're a wife and you're watching your husband in a domestic violence matter, and he has a bulge in his pocket, and there's a firearm I'm speaking about. You can imagine how I will feel if I am a state prosecutor cross-examining you and you watching me cut and I know you have a firearm. You know how I will feel as a judge that you know you're providing, you are in the public gallery staring me down because I am now trying to deal with a matter, or how I will feel as I am a police officer cross-examining you and I have a firearm. Those are justifiable grounds that the Chief Justice is correct, which is why around the world. But you know what? In Trinidad and Tobago, everybody is wrong and we are right. That arrogance has to stop. Educate ourselves to understand international best practice. Those positions, those situations I use should not in any way allow a police officer to have a firearm in the court. However, the Welfare Association has serious concerns, and it is justified that the type of criminals we have now, they are brazen, they are bold, they might very well target the police officer. The officers may be bringing evidence into the court that they need to protect themselves with that type of evidence. Yes. These are the circumstances that should allow it. So it should not be a broad brush, but there should be specific circumstances, and the Chief Justice gave such approval. He's not being arrogant about it, but there's a regulation, and if it is we want to say give every police officer allowed to walk with a firearm, change the law. The way I have been trained, that is the law, you work to the law. Until the law is changed, we have to adhere to the law. You don't tell police officers, do not do your job because I don't like how the law is drafted. That is not professionalism, that is not policing. To me, that is tantamount to treason.
Gary Griffith, thank you very much for this highly spirited conversation this morning. You have awakened us, you've woken us up. Yeah, but thank you very much.
You like my background. This is not a plant-like substance, by the way. This is a snake. It's a snake plant, not a Balizia snake. It's a snake plant that my wife has laid out in the backyard.
All right, until next time. Bye for now.